All right, so welcome to today's session. So we are now session number 2 of the journey. I just want to remind you that the journey is about the external experience. It's about the external process. And I just want to remind you why OMG is the first 6 months about the internal process and the second 6 months about the external process. Because the external process, I mean, we've covered the internal process. That's just your stuff, the things that show up, and it's all that internal stuff. Whether it's internal thoughts and lots of pondering and lots of processing and just being present, being in the now, all that stuff. But the external is actually coming back to form, where the internal is about the formless, the external is about bringing yourself back to form and bringing yourself back into not just the moment, but being in time. Like, the time is an illusion, yes, but it's an illusion that we have manifested to experience what we're experiencing, right? So it's like, well, there is time now. So therefore, in time, there is a story. So in the external process, it's about bringing yourself back into the story. This is the level we're talking about in living this stuff. You can live it in the internal process and just be in the now, be in love, cool. But can you do it in the external process? And this is where this work of OMG is all about, can you live this stuff? In WTF Experience, I talk about what the stuff is, just for people to reconnect and remember, oh, I feel that. I have felt that. I felt it the entire time. And I know that's to be true. And then the question I always pose is, yeah, but can you live that? So this second half of OMG that we're actually all going through together, is about the living of it in the story, the living with it, playing with money, finances, form, right? The journey is all about the story. If you haven't gathered yet, it's about the story, which is something within the first 6 months you kind of almost disregard, although it's not there to be disregarded, but naturally people disregard because they'll just say, well, the story is an illusion. But in the second 6 months of OMG, it's like, yes, it's an illusion, right? But it's an illusion that you created. It's an illusion that you manifested. So what are you going to do with that? Are you going to disregard something you've manifested? It's like when people say, well, in my story, I used to talk about trying to pay the rent. I couldn't pay the rent many years ago. And, there was a hurdle I got over. And I remember once I got over that hurdle, when I would support other people, if they're going through a time of difficulty, right, or they're trying to reclaim power from something, I can see when they're not reclaiming power and this just becomes a mental application, and they're going, well, paying the rent's an illusion anyway. Who's the landlord anyway? And that's true, right? Well, who's the landlord anyway? But if it's a mental application, you're not really integrating, what's there to be integrated. And the way I get them out of being a mental application, I'll remind them, yes, but you manifest, yes, who's the landlord anyway? Well, the landlord's me. What's money anyway? Well, money is you. It's all energy. So great. Okay, now that you've acknowledged that, understand that you manifested the landlord to take money off you. So what are you going to do about that? You manifested the story that, that you are working for money, right? I mean, that's not the truth, but that story plays out. So, so again, the first thing that really helps people in this, especially in this module, which is about realizing, the story and how the story, the role the story plays. We've talked about the role love plays, the role ego plays, the role your process plays, and reclaiming power. We've talked about that. We're talking about manifestation and its role. Well, let's talk about the role the story plays. The story's there in time. It's something that you're experiencing. I mean, without it, you wouldn't be having this whole experience. So why would you want to disregard the thing that is your stage? It's your stage, the story and time that we experience the story in is your stage for you to be able to experience everything that you're here to experience. The first 6 months of OMG is about an internal process and realizing and reconnecting and neutralizing, whatever you want to call it, all the things that happen in that first 6 months. The second 6 months is, and this is why OMG is so powerful. It's about then bringing out from within you to the external world, bringing into form. You see, most people make a mistake when they realize that, well, when they perceive that they're here to get something from the external world. They're here to get something from their story. They're here to get something from the world. No, the world doesn't owe you anything, and it has nothing for you except for you to have an internal process. The first 6 months is about your internal process, but once that process has been settled, you know, like it's like neutralized quite a bit, right? You're ready to then take what you realize within you and bring it out. Play, go in the story. Now, there's different levels of going into the story. If you haven't completely neutralized your stuff, and there's so much power still in the internal process, which someone who's first doing OMG, you know, we can't stay in that 6 months forever. So it's a 12-month program. After 6 months, we start moving on, right? A lot of the people, when you're first doing the first time they're doing OMG, they're not ready to go from the internal process to the external process. You guys are doing a different experience. You guys are. We've talked about this. We've experienced this. Okay, you are ready for that. And when I say the first 6 months, an OMG person is not ready, it's like, well, it doesn't matter if they're not ready, we still go, right? And as I always say in the OMG program, there's things that you won't understand or you won't comprehend or you won't have space to be able to digest. But once you do, it will be stored there. It will come back to you. 6 months later, 12 months later, you'll be like, oh, remember in month 9 of OMG, that's, you know, things will land when they need to land. So we don't just sit there in the first 6 months, you know. Yeah, so I guess it's a reminder of how the OMG program works, and a reminder of, you know, of what we're doing now and in the external process. And I'm hoping by giving you this reminder, you really realize what the journey is about. You know, the journey is about the story. When the first time someone does OMG, they're not really ready to hear about that. The journey is about the story, because they'll just go back into the story. And as I said, they're not even ready to go back into the story. So it doesn't really work. So in the journey, okay, in the module, the journey in OMG, I talk about the 3 phases of consciousness. Just give them a bit of reference, direction. It's not ready to go, hey, you know, let's go back into the story. So I'm hoping by sharing what I'm sharing with you, which is reminding you how the OMG program works, that you will realize what the journey is really about. And it is all about the story. I've got you guys to ponder on a couple of things. The main thing that I want to highlight, I'll just go to my notes here. There we go. There's a couple of things that, the main thing that I wanted, a lot of you guys have been putting your ponderings down on the Facebook page. Great, that's awesome. The main 2 things that I want to talk about is, what is it to be moved? Okay, because there was about 3 or 4 things I put for you to ponder, but the main 2 things that I want to talk about is, what is it to be moved? Because in the OMG module of, what module are we? Let's say thought of the module of the journey, I speak about being moved quite a lot, right? So at this level, I want to go, well, let's just get very clear about what is it being moved. All right. I'm not going to talk to you about, you know, what's the feeling feel like? Feels light when we don't need to revisit that. You know that. I just want to just look at the English language, and when it says being moved, there is to move and there is to be moved. All right? What's the difference? The main difference, and I haven't looked this up in the dictionary, so anyone correct me if my English vocabulary is incorrect. But to move, it's a doing thing. You're moving, right? To feel moved, right? If you ponder on that, right, you're already being moved. You're not looking to be moved. There's no searching for, it's when you realize you've been moved, you only realize you've been moved once you've been moved, once the moving is happening. Do you get that? No, some of your faces are like, huh? Moved. I feel moved, right? The moment I say I feel moved, what I'm trying to get you to realize is that when you're saying you feel moved, right? There wasn't a part of you that decided that when I feel like I'm going to move myself this way. What you're realizing is how you feel moved. It goes down to the same content when I talk about you didn't choose what you love. You only realize what you love. There was no thinking process that went into your head when I'm going to decide to love my daughter. I'm going to decide to love my son. I'm going to decide to love my partner. I'm going to decide to love cricket. I'm going to decide to love... No, there was a realization that you love cricket, that you love flying an aeroplane, right? And in the story, you'll go and identify where you perceive to have decided that. This is the same thing, right? When you feel moved, there was no conversation or consideration about, hey, I'm going to feel moved to do this. Or I'm going to feel I can't even put in word. But the point is, I feel moved. It's almost like it's past tense. It's already happened. It's already happening. So if it's already happened and it's already happening, your involvement as a drop was very minimal in that, because when did you decide that you feel moved? You didn't. You just realized, this is how I feel moved. So I'll leave that for you to ponder more on, and we can do questions and answers at the end about that conversation. This statement, what I just shared with you, this statement, I spoke about this it's in the OMG, in the module. This relates to what I just shared, right? When you get the feeling from doing, when you get the feeling that you normally get from doing, from not doing, then you're ready to do. So the feeling that you receive from doing something, maybe something you love to do, right? When you get that same feeling, or when that void feels full, in other words, when you get that feeling from not doing that, then you're ready to do that. And what I mean ready to do that, I mean you're free to do that in a free way, with free will. Okay? Because remember, there's many times in my life where I've found what I love to do, and I speak about this in different podcasts and stuff. I find what I love to do, and I do what I love, and it feels like I never work a day in my life, as they say, because you're doing what you love to do. But I need to do that, because if I stop doing that, I'm not feeling that love. So I need to then understand or grasp who I really am, my internal process, and find the love of who I am. So I'm feeling that love or that fullness rather than a void, right? So therefore, I no longer need to do what I love to do to feel that love. And now I'm free to do what I love to do because I can, because I choose to. It's from free will. I'm no longer doing it in return to feel love. I'm no longer doing it in return to feel connection. Now, again, you don't want to have this conversation early, too early, although I sometimes share it on a podcast, but because you want to encourage people to do what they love to do. It is in doing what you love to do that you start to rediscover who you truly are. So, but you will get to a point where you are doing everything that you love to do, and then you realize, and again, where did my realizations of all this stuff come through? When I felt no longer to speak, where I had questions about speaking. There's been moments in my life, right? And I was like, well, if I don't speak, I don't have that same purpose. I don't feel that. It's like, well, really? It looks like we need some more internal process happening here. So that's what's being said there. So take what I just said. They're very linked. Okay, so there's one more thing that I got you to ponder on, which is what I want to really expand on. I don't have it on my notes. Maybe, Jamie, you've got it on your notes, but someone can tell me. It was in relation to the story. Yeah, I remember it now. It's coming. No. Here it comes. So it's in relation to the story. So which is what we're here to talk about, the journey, which is the story, right? And I said, what's the difference between being in the moment versus being in the story, right? Or a different way to question or phrase that is, what's the difference between being here right now, in the now, versus being present to the story? Okay, that's what ultimately I'm here to talk about. I've already started talking about it. Just trying to see how I exactly...
Being in a story that's without control, it's a story that could be... Or
No. I just... It seems like it's not in our pondering points, but I did speak about it, and I know I put it in the pondering points because I read some of your pondering on Facebook, and there was, like I was reading Niv's just before, and he was speaking about it.
Number 4 has 2 parts to it, so it's like the second half of number 4.
Yeah, what's the second part?
I mean, I can pull it up, but you might have been scanning past it because it's too...
That's okay. I've got it anyway. Thanks, Jamie. I've already got it. Thanks, Chrissy. So basically, that was it. What's the difference between being in the story and being in the moment, right? Because that's an interesting question, and I've been reading some of your ponderings about that. But that's an interesting question because it really does relate to what we're here to talk about, which is the internal process and the external process. The first thing I can tell you about that is that when you're here, like the idea of being here in the now, right? Which is when you're being here in the now, you are here, you're so in the moment, in the now, that there is no past or future, or you're in the place where everything that ever was or everything that ever is, which is one of the other quotes I got you to relate to. When you're really here, it feels as though you are everywhere. Not just here or there. You are everywhere. You are the nothingness. So that moment that we're describing there, which is now, and in later on OMGs, we would talk about the difference between being present, right, in time versus being in the now, which is basically transcending time, right? So what that means is when you're transcending time, you're transcending the story. So you're completely in the now. It's like sitting in the rock stuff. You know, you're sitting on a rock. Like it's that bliss, it's that joy. It's got nothing to do with the story. It relates to the internal process. Whereas being present to the story, right, is different, right? The story is invited to be there. And I've already kind of, you know, expanded on this in the last session. But so this is going to just kind of get you to remind you a little bit and also become clear about the difference. One, you're present to the nothingness. The other, you're present to the form. Now, of course, the form is the nothingness. It's all one of the same, just as the iceberg is the ocean. It's floating in the ocean and it's made out of the ocean. It's one of the same, right? So we're always playing and moving energy, whether it's energy that's formed or energy that's formless. So being in the now is that first 6 month internal process. And it's not like, oh, well, you're not going to do that anymore. You do. You'll be experiencing moments where, you know, that whole happiness for no reason. There's no story that influences who you are and how you feel because you've transcended the story. There's a moment you're so completely present that you're just in the bliss. So there's no requirement to do something to express or experience that bliss. Okay? The external process, right, or being present to the story is about taking that feeling that you have realized internally and being able to express that externally. You're bringing and you're giving to the world what you have found and what you continue to find within you. You're bringing that and expressing outside of you. When someone is not conscious and they're on a path of being unconscious, they're looking to gain from the world, from the story. What does the story owe me? What does this relationship owe me? What does my kids owe me? What does the world owe me? What does the government owe me? What does my boss owe me? It's always like, what do I get? Because they're looking for their feeling in the external world. So that's not what we're talking about, and that's not the conversation we're having here. We're talking about taking that internal process and bring it into the story. But to bring it into the story, you must participate in the story. So you must recognize the story. Again, remember, this feels like when you've been doing this internal process for such a long time, when then you come to this external process, it feels like you're learning to walk again. Because yeah, I've been in the story many years. I've been in the story most of my life. Yeah, but now it's not you that's showing up. You remember the bottom of the bottle has opened up, as I speak about in the WTF experience, and you feel different because now the ocean is moving in and out of you, or you become aware of the ocean because it always was moving in and out of you. But your awareness was that I was only this drop in here. But now this bottom of the bottle is becoming open, more and more open. So you're starting to feel different. So therefore, when you start to go into the story and you're like, all right, I'm in the story. Well, now it's about making money. There's a part of you that goes, yeah, that's not it. That's not it. And it feels like you're learning to walk again. It's like, yeah, but there's money here. There's money to be in. And it's like, yeah, but that's not how we play. We move money. We move energy. We're not looking to attain it. It's there to be moved. Just like you're there to be moved, the money or whatever. I talk about the story, people just go to money. Health, last week I spoke about weight loss, losing weight, right? Which I know very well, right? It's okay to go into the story and go, now you have this past and future, right? That makes up the story. But we're not comparing. Remember, we spoke about this last week. We're not comparing what's happened in the past or what could be, right? You're in the story. You have a vision of what's taking place, right? But you're present to the story that's now. But the story that is now has a past and has a future. So the future is this result that you want to get, this outcome. You want to lose 10 kilos. You want to live a different lifestyle. You want to travel more. When you come to the next FTW trip, you want to go business class. This is part of the manifestation here. All right. This is where you learn or begin to experience moving energy. Yes, I want to do that, right? But you don't act on anything that's out there. You're still here, but you're here and you're being moved based on something that's out there, but your attention is not out there. So in other words, you're not going, well, how much money do I need for me to buy business class? Because I want to fly business class when I go to the FTW trip, right? You don't then make decisions based on that. You acknowledge that, you have that awareness, but then you bring yourself back into the story and continue to act what you feel. It's different to the now because the now, there's no story. Over here, you are in the story. That's the difference between being in the moment, which is that internal process, in the now, just to be very clear, because later on we're going to be talking about the difference between being present versus being in the now, right? As you have all done in previous OMG. That is that internal process, or that is, and again, when I say this internal process, external process, it's not that you're going to use one or the other. You're going to use both. There'll be moments where you might go for a walk in the morning and you're just connecting to the internal process, to the formless, to the energy. But then your mind becomes free for you to think about the story, and you get ideas and you feel moved. You feel creativity around the story. This is how you live this stuff. But when you're first maturing in this, which, someone who's first doing OMG, they can't do that because, and some of you will still be experiencing this, and that's normal. And so don't go, well, hang on, I'm still not there yet. That's cool. Okay. It's cool. Right. That's fine. That's part of the journey. It's part of the process. Don't go, oh, I'm still not there yet. But if I invited someone who's just doing OMG, it's way early to consider what I'm saying to them, because they think to themselves, oh, don't go. What do they think to themselves? They come into the story and then they think to themselves, yeah, but I don't want to make it about the money. Yeah, but was that agenda driven? There's all that stuff still going on. For you guys, either that stuff is not happening anymore or it's happening a lot less. Okay? So I wanted to make something clear as we continue into this OMG module, into the rest of the external process. It's not either internal or external. It's about bringing the internal world and the external world together to be one of the same. Okay? That only happens when I see form and see it as the formless. But I am form and holding the form. I am still part of the story. But I also understand there is no story. At the same time, when I know there's no story, I understand that I have formed this story. Why did I form this story? It's for me to sit there and go, there's no story. It's just an illusion. So please understand, don't mistake what I'm saying. It's like, okay, so now we're just going to be in the story. No, both. I'm just bringing your people's attention, because that's how OMG works. Now we come to the external. that's what the external is about. But it's both. I go for a walk in the morning and I'm connecting to the formless. I'm being in the now. There's no story. And that's how my creativity starts. Then I start, I start get ideas about the business, about opportunity, about how I'm going to work with other people, and maybe I can share this opportunity for others to actually do what I'm doing. Like these ideas, they're all story related. Well, how does it work financially? It's got to be financial. Then the idea of the financial comes in. It's got to work. No, I don't want them, I'm getting all those who are currently working with me. You're seeing I'm making it up as I go along. It's unfolding. But make no mistake, there is a story. But at this point, I don't get lost in the story. I don't get sucked into the story. Because if you do, then you can't move the story. You can't move energy. At this point, I'd like to thank Leah for sending me a birthday gift the other day. It's a shirt. It says, I move energy. I'm not wearing it today, but I just thought, I've always said, I want a shirt that says, I move energy. So I got one. That's awesome. So the energy moved for that. Now I will wear it next time. It says, I move energy. So what I'm sharing with you is simple, right? But the application of that, to ensure that you have processed, and you'll know yourself, you'll know that if, like I remember, I was working with Jamie as just coaching him one-on-one, where I try to get him to go back into the story. And at first he wasn't ready. I was like, well, it's okay. You can make money here. But the moment he put his attention on making money, he would just fall on his ass. It's like, but the thing is, that was at a very early stage, and see, you would get what I'm saying right now. Because it takes a while for you to understand, well, I'm not here to make money. You're learning to walk again. I'm moving it. I'm moving energy. I'm not making money. I'm not there to keep it. It's just moving. It's to buy my business. It comes into, you're not even thinking about the business. It just moves. For me, sometimes it moves for me to pay people I'm working with. It's just moving. It's being moved. So I'm glad I made that point, because I wanted to make sure I don't forget. It's not just internal or external. It's one of the same. That's what ultimately it's about. They become one of the same, right? So you're having this internal process and external process at the same time. When I say at the same time, when it's in time, you'll notice, because we're experiencing ourselves through time, you'll notice that one comes in and the other one feeds into the other. It's this feeding thing that's happening. It's still two as an internal and external process. It's still two as formless and form, but they're connected and they're playing together. It's something to ponder on, but that's why that was the main thing I wanted you guys to ponder on. That was the main one. I was just like, what's the difference between being in the now versus being in the story? So now you can reflect on what you've written, and just consider my reflections, my pondering. Not that mine's right, but just consider what you've written and consider what you've been pondering on. So that brings us to an end for our module of the journey, and it's the beginning for this next. We have another 5 more months of external process related stuff. Everything that we're going to be doing moving forward is I'm going to keep trying to bring the story into it, bring time into it, bring story, and not for you to transcend the story, but for you to be able to move it. And you move the story by letting the story that was to be there. Let the story that is to be or could be to be there, and then bring yourself back into the story that is. So the story that is I have this past and future, but I'm here right now, and I am responding and doing what I feel moved to do according to a story that is unfolding that has this past and future. Okay, that's different. Again, another difference I'll give you, just again, I'm trying to get you to relate to the difference that I'm talking about here, because it's such a fine line sometimes. It's when I give the example of being in the moment when someone's meditating and then being completely present and being in the now, not just relaxation meditation, but full meditation. They're completely in the now, versus when someone is present in the doing. So when energy is moving, right? When energy is being moved, it's known as the flow, right? And sometimes I say to people, well, I'm in a meditative state when I'm walking, because that's when I go and pondering, right? It's a meditative state for me because it's the same as the stillness that someone experiences in the now. It's the same yet different, because in the stillness, it's just completely still. The energy is just omnipresent, right? Now the energy moves. That's, when I'm experiencing myself in the flow and I'm doing something, right? Whether that's creativity is being expressed through me, or I'm exercising, I'm pondering, I'm doing something, and I am present in the doing. All right? That's being present to the story. Okay, it's two different, same thing. Here's the stillness, the internal process, but now it's being moved. It's been moved into what? Form, story. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.